Life in the country is good, especially during the next summer vacation. A young married couple, Tatiana and Dimitri, bought a country house with money donated for the wedding, and were very happy about their purchase. The girl did not really like digging in the ground, so she spent most of her time on a chaise longue, sunbathing in the sun. Dimitri, in turn, grew up in the village and could easily do any work around the house and garden. One day, when Dimitri left for work, Tatiana was left alone and saw that a car drove up to the next house. Opening the curtain a little, she looked curiously at her new neighbors. They turned out to be a young couple who also bought a country house for themselves. After a quick glance at herself in the mirror and straightening her hair, Tatiana moved forward to meet them. She was bored during her husband's absence, so new friends would not hurt, she thought. Opening the creaking rusty gate, the girl slipped into the yard. Young people were inspecting the territory and loudly discussing where and what they planned to install and plant. Tatiana coughed defiantly, and the neighbors noticed her. The young people got to know each other and agreed to go to Tatiana's to have tea. The girl quickly put the samovar on and took sausage and cheese out of the refrigerator. It was very hot outside, so Tatiana went in a swimsuit, wearing a transparent mesh black dress over it. Her figure was very seductive in this outfit, so a young man named Mikhail could not take his eyes off her. His wife Victoria saw his interest and was very angry at the girl and her husband. Therefore, they did not sit for a long time. Tatiana caught the scrutinizing gaze of a guy who was a little older than her and had a very gorgeous and muscular body. His sweaty gray t-shirt emphasized the strength of his muscles and his pumped abs. At parting, the girl invited the couple to her place for barbecue in the evening. Tatiana smiled and closed her eyes. The young man clearly pleased her, so the girl frantically ran for her phone to inform her husband about a new acquaintance. After telling him in detail about them, she asked Dimitri to buy a barbecue and alcohol so that everyone could gather in the evening in a neighborly way. The man did not think anything suspicious and gladly agreed. In the evening, Tatiana tinted her eyes and looked forward to the arrival of the guests. By the appointed time, Mikhail and Victoria appeared on the threshold. The men held out their hands to each other in greeting and went outside to cook meat. The girls stayed at home to wash the vegetables and chop them. The men were drinking beer, so they quickly found a common language, which cannot be said about the girls. Tatiana was much prettier than her dense neighbor, so the female rivalry did not allow Victoria to relax and enjoy the evening. An hour later, the men finished their preparations and called their wives. The girls had already prepared snacks too and went outside to the gazebo where the feast was planned. Gracefully bending in her back in her tight summer dress, Tatiana laid a tablecloth, and everyone else began to put food on the table. The young people turned on the music and had a lot of fun. Even Victoria calmed down a little and relaxed when she saw that Dima and Tatiana have a romantic and tender relationship. A pleasant yellow dawn appeared on the horizon of the dark night sky, and Mikhail and Victoria hurried home. Tatiana woke up only in the evening. When she went outside, she felt all the heat of this summer day, so she hurried to take off her clothes in order to jump into the swimming pool on their territory in a swimsuit. Dimitri got up a long time ago, so he removed all the consequences of yesterday's festivities and began to build a greenhouse. When he saw his wife, who plopped into the pool with a run, the man put down his tools and went to her, having learned about her well-being after yesterday's feast. He sighed heavily. Tatiana was afraid that she had blurted out too much in a drunken state, so she froze and looked up at Dima. The young man informed his wife that the neighbors had left in the afternoon after a loud quarrel. The girl was very upset, because her husband was going to go on a business trip for a couple of days, and now she will have no one to communicate with again. Shrugging her shoulders, the girl dived into the water, thinking about the reason for the quarrel between the neighbors. The next day, Dimitri left again. Tatiana was left alone again, so she decided to lie in the sun all day with a book in her hand. However, she quickly dozed off. She was awakened by the sound of an approaching car, from which her neighbor got out. What a blessing, she thought, not seeing his wife with him. Putting down the book and jumping up, Tatiana ran into the house to make sure of her irresistibility. To her surprise, there was a knock on the door. The girl was a little worried, but gave permission to enter. A neighbor's grandmother appeared on the threshold, who came to water the garden and brought some fresh zucchini. Tatiana expected far from this and, thanking the woman, went out with her to greet her neighbor. However, he had already left. Tatiana went to her chaise longue, annoyed by the arrival of a neighbor. A couple of days later, Dimitri returned in the morning. The young family spent time as usual, everyone on their own. Tatiana confessed to her husband that she is very sad when he leaves, so she wants to return to the city. Dimitri was very surprised and asked about the neighbors. Upon learning that they were not coming, the man took out his mobile phone and began to quickly search for something. After a few minutes, he put the phone to his ear, and Tatiana heard Mikhail's voice. The men talked quickly. It turned out that after that gathering, Victoria's mother invited the young people to her village. Mikhail did not want to go, which is why the young people quarreled. A couple of days ago, when the man arrived, he did not see Dima's car and therefore quickly turned around and drove back. Dima invited the guy to sit again in the evening to unwind a little. Tatiana was very pleased with what she heard, but pretended to be completely indifferent to her husband. Opening the closet, the girl began to search diligently in it for what she would wear tonight. By the appointed time, a car horn sounded near their house, and Mikhail's voice was heard. He brought some meat and alcohol. The men immediately started cooking barbecue and drinking. That evening, the young people had fun again, and in the morning everyone dispersed. After a couple of days, Dimitri was going to work again, so this time Tatiana wanted to make every attempt to make Mikhail stay. Walking around the yard and noticing a young neighbor, the girl with a flirtatious smile asked him about Victoria, diligently pretending that she was interested in knowing how things were with his wife. Tatiana casually asked when he was going to leave. The man just smiled and spread his hands, saying that the yard was full of work. The next day, Dimitri went to work early in the morning, and Tatiana was thinking how to invite the guy to her place, but so that no one would be suspicious. Going out into the courtyard, the girl looked at him with a masterly gaze. After a little thought, the girl decided that she would ask her neighbor to come with his chainsaw so that he would remove the branches covering the chaise longue from the sun and interfering with her tan. Defiantly, the girl went to the chaise longue. After lying down for a few minutes, she put on her glasses and stood up, shouting at her neighbor over the fence. At that moment, he also stayed in his swimming trunks, as he was working in the yard in the sun. After explaining her request, the girl returned to her couch, waiting for Mikhail's arrival. He entered their plot and approached the girl. Taking off her glasses, Tatiana pretended to point at the branches that allegedly interfere with her. The man threw the wires and turned on his saw. His powerful and pumped-up hands famously coped with the task, so the girl, admiring them, did not notice how Mikhail cut down the last knot. Tatiana gracefully stood up and stretched. The man began to collect wires on the ground, but the girl stopped him. Walking up to him, she touched his shoulder and thanked him flirtatiously. Mikhail was a little embarrassed and began to collect branches and wires even faster. The girl quickly went into the house and took out the lemonade, heading straight to the gazebo behind the house. She called him with her to quench her thirst after such a difficult job. The guy shrugged, put all the tools on the ground and followed his neighbor. The pleasant shade of the gazebo and cold lemonade allowed one of the summer days to recover a little. Tatiana did not offer the man to pay for his work. The guy started to refuse and was about to get up and go, but the girl abruptly got up and came close to him, looking him straight in the eyes. At that very moment, Tatiana's phone was bursting with calls from her husband, who had gone home and wanted to warn his wife. Opening the gate, the man saw wires and branches. After going into the house, he found no one there, greatly surprised by the strange coincidence of circumstances. The man walked towards his wife's favorite place, but there was no one there either. Suddenly it dawned on him, and he went to the gazebo to greet his wife. Opening the white silk curtains flying in the light wind, Dimitri was stunned. Such an action was taking place on the sofas, which completely knocked the ground out from under the man's feet. Tatiana, seeing her husband, jumped up, and her husband rushed at his opponent with his fists. Mikhail, in turn, tried to convey to the neighbor that it was his wife who offered such a fee for work. Dimitri froze, looked at his young wife, rushed away from that gazebo, got into the car and abruptly drove off. Mikhail left, and Tatiana was left alone. On the same day, Dimitri filed for divorce, having been married for only a couple of months. After a while, the former lovers sold the cottage and divided the money. This is how the first family summer ended for young people, Tatiana, Dimitri and Mikhail.